Good day, and welcome to today's lesson on English Home Language. My name is Mr. Anker, and today we'll be looking specifically at the drama essay of Paper 2. This is how our lesson will develop. Firstly, we'll be looking at terminology, then the basic analysis of the drama, how to approach the questions, and then various answering techniques. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to interpret the essay questions based on the terminology used in the question. You will be taught answering techniques, how to analyze a drama according to a question, how to summarize the main ideas and formulate an argument, and how to use the Peel method effectively. What you should be able to do and know. You should know the questioning verbs and how to approach a literary essay. You must be able to construct a thesis statement. You must know the drama extremely well and the basic aspects of the drama. You must be able to use the Peel method successfully, and you must be able to formulate in a precise and detailed manner so that you adhere to the word count. Common errors. Learners present a superficial retelling of the story, so don't just narrate the storyline, actually address the question. Additionally, a marking guideline of the previous year was studied and forced upon the current essay topic. Many essays were narrative and did not formulate an argument. Learners repeated the question statement as an introduction at the end of each paragraph, which became extremely monotonous. Inadequate or vague references were made to the text to support the argument being developed. Substantiation must be specific and relevant to the question. Writing the essay and then rewriting it does not constitute to planning and is the reason for some candidates not completing the paper. Many learners use language very carelessly, making common errors such as not capitalizing words, using the incorrect punctuation, and not using the apostrophe correctly. In some cases, basic plot details were not known and characters were incorrectly identified. This would suggest that candidates had not read the prescribed texts, or they watched film adaptations of it. These are some of the skills that you are required when you're writing your English Home Language Paper 2. Now, before we continue to travel to Elsinore, Venice, or Salem, let's take a quick commercial break. Welcome back. Now, let's look at some key words and terminologies that are crucial to your understanding of Paper 2. Critically discuss means to weigh up the strengths and weaknesses of an idea and respond to it in detail. Critically comment means to make logical connections between ideas, offering your own perspective based on a thorough evaluation. Validity means to determine how truthful a statement is in order to determine its credibility. Justify means to give reasons to prove how reasonable a statement is. Soliloquy is a speech made by a major character alone on stage, in which the character reveals his or her innermost thoughts and deepest emotions to the audience. Aside is a comment made by a character in the play that is intended to be heard by the audience and not by other characters. Stage directions, instructions to actors generally written in italics and enclosed in brackets. These are usually given by the director in a stage production. A tragic hero is an essential character of a play that has a fatal flaw, which is also called an hamartia, that leads to their downfall. Dramatic irony. The irony inherent, implicit in speeches of characters, where the audience is aware, so the audience is aware of a fact, but the characters in the play are unaware of it. So the audience is aware and the characters are unaware of the original intention or double meaning by the speaker of the dialogue. Now, let's look at how to interpret and understand a drama. Firstly, you need to know the setting, which is the context based on the time and place of the story. Then, the characters, the individuals who create the action in the story. Look closely at their interaction with each other. Plot, the sequence of events that make up the story. Theme, the underlying message or main idea in the story. Conflict, the central struggle or problem that drives the plot. Narrative, the point of view from which the story is told. Literary devices, techniques to enhance the storytelling like imagery or symbolism. Now, let's look at an analysis of the 3 drama options that you have for paper 2. The setting. The first drama that we'll be looking at is Hamlet. Hamlet is predominantly set in Denmark, and this primary setting is Elsinore Castle. These are the major characters: Hamlet, Claudius, Gertrude, Polonius, Ophelia, Laertes, Horatio, the Ghost, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and Fortinbras. The plot. Prince Hamlet seeks to avenge his father's murder by his uncle, King Claudius. His internal struggle with morality, revenge, and indecision as he wants to ensure the validity of the ghost's claims leads to the deaths of multiple characters, including his own. At the end of the drama, the entire royal family dies, leading to Fortinbras from Norway to ascend the throne. The major themes: revenge, madness, loyalty and honor, corruption and decay, action versus inaction, and appearance versus reality. The major conflict in Hamlet. At the heart of this conflict is Hamlet's indecision about how to fulfill the ghost's command to kill Claudius, who usurped, meaning he took the throne unlawfully, and married Hamlet's mother, Gertrude. The tragic hero is Hamlet. His tragic flaw, his hamartia, can be seen as his inability to act due to his strong moral compass. Now, let's go visit Venice with Othello. The setting of Othello, as just mentioned, is Venice, which is the primary backdrop of the play. The characters. The major characters are Othello, Desdemona, Iago, Cassio, Emilia, Roderigo, and Brabantio. The plot. Othello is a Moorish general, which means he is of African descent. He is manipulated by his envious lieutenant Iago into believing his wife Desdemona is unfaithful, leading to jealousy, tragedy, and the murder of Desdemona. Upon hearing the claims against Desdemona were untruthful, he orders the death of Iago and then commits suicide, hoping to redeem himself. The major themes: jealousy, misogyny and patriarchy, prejudice and racism, honor and reputation, appearance versus reality, love and trust. The major conflict in Othello is the internal and external struggle caused by Iago's manipulation, leading to Othello to mistrust Desdemona and ultimately succumb to destructive jealousy. The tragic hero in this play is Othello. His tragic flaw, or his hamartia, can be seen as his jealousy, as this causes him to be easily manipulated by Iago. Now, let's move to the witch trials in Salem, the Crucible. The setting of the play is Salem. Here are 4 of the places within the Salem community that we find the setting: the house of Reverend Paris, Proctor's home, the courtroom, and the jails. The major characters are John and Elizabeth Proctor, Abigail Williams, Reverend Hale, Reverend Paris, Judge Danforth, Deputy Governor Hathorne, Mary, Thomas, Anne and Ruth Putnam, Betty Paris, and Tituba. The plot. In the Crucible, mass hysteria grips Salem as accusations of witchcraft spiral out of control, fueled by personal grudges and deceit, leading to tragic outcomes. John Proctor has an affair with Abigail Williams, which results in obsession for Abigail. She uses the hysteria of she uses the hysteria of the witch trials to falsely accuse Elizabeth, John's wife. This leads to John exposing the truth of his affair. Owing to the unjust court system, John is prosecuted for witchcraft and ultimately dies, choosing his reputation over his life. The major themes: private vengeance, honor and reputation, guilt and redemption, mass hysteria, theocracy and Puritanism, the individual versus society. The major conflict in the crucible: the false accusations of witchcraft and how it is used as a vehicle for personal vendettas, and the mass hysteria it causes is the major conflict in the play. This leads to the deaths of many falsely accused Salemites. Now, let's look at John as a tragic hero. His initial lust for Abigail is his fatal flaw. He's a martyr. However, it is the Puritan society and its unjust law system that causes John's final demise. Now, let's look at how to approach the question. So here are some of the problems that learners make. Learners often just narrate the entire plot instead of addressing the topic. The introduction, body, paragraphs, and conclusion are often not structured correctly, resulting in an incoherent essay. A lack of planning and poor mind mapping leads to the essay lacking content and structure. Learners fail to provide textual evidence in support of their arguments. To answer the questions, you must know what to expect. This paper has a total of 80 marks. You will be required to answer questions from 3 sections. You must answer 2 seen poems and a compulsory unseen poem for 30 marks. Then it is expected to write a literary essay on one genre and do a contextual on another. The style of questions. One question will be a literary essay. If you decide to do the drama essay, which is what this lesson prepares you for, you must do the novel contextual, and the same is true vice versa. Thus, you must have one essay and one contextual from a different genre. Try and adhere to the word count of 400 to 450 words. How to approach the literary essay. A literary essay is a reasoned response to a question or statement on a work of literature. You may agree, disagree, or provide a mixed response to the topic. The style of the essay is formal. Avoid colloquial language, for example, the writers like saying things, that guy, and contractions, for example, can't. So write the word out in full, cannot. Study the topic carefully and underline keywords with a highlighter in your approach to answering the question. Steps to writing the essay. Engage with the essay question. Work on the mind map. Very important. You must have a mind map. That is far more important than writing a draft. Rather opt to do a mind map as opposed to writing a rough draft and then your final. Structure your essay using the Peel method. Write your essay out neatly. So, how to approach the question. Step 1. Decide whether you agree with the statement and to what extent. So, read the question set very carefully. Underline the key words of the topic. Ensure all the aspects of the essay question are addressed. Many of the characters in Hamlet are totally dishonorable and cannot be redeemed. That is an example of a thesis statement, right? Do you agree with this statement? Justify your response by a close reference to the text. How to work on your mind map. Step 2. Brainstorm all your ideas. In this case, write down all the reasons why you agree or disagree with a topic. Structure your ideas. Once you have all your ideas, evaluate which ones you think will be best for your topic. Eliminate ideas that will not work. Prepare your evidence. Next to each of your major points, put examples from the drama that support your argument. Ask yourself if this argument answers the essay question. And very important, decide on the paragraphs. Put your ideas in order. Each major argument should form one paragraph. This is an example of how to structure a Hamlet essay. So you've got the topic here, then you've got your introduction. So first, your first paragraph is going to be on the ghost, the second one, the inability to act, and then the third one will be on external factors. And there you have your statement for your conclusion. Similar with Othello, you would have your topic here, you'd have your introduction, your thesis is mentioned within your introduction, how you're going to discuss it. Then you will have your first paragraph on jealousy, second one on pride and arrogance, your third one on the destruction, and then lastly, the conclusion. You will structure your essay according to Peel. Point, explain, evidence. So when you provide evidence or examples from the drama, and then link. Linking the point back to the question. Now, before we continue with Salem witch trials in the Crucible, let's take a quick commercial break. Welcome back. Now, let's look at some answering techniques. So, the writing process. How to write an introductory paragraph. Make a broad statement introducing the topic. This could be done by defining a specific term within a question or using a quote that is appropriate to the topic and contextualizing its relevancy in a single sentence. Your opening should only be a sentence or two. Next, rewrite the essay topic in your own words and state your stance. Say whether you agree or disagree with the topic. This would be your thesis statement, very important. This is one sentence that captures the essence of your essay. Then, mention the points you will give in support of your stance on the topic. Thus, indicate how your argument will ensue or develop. This is an example of an introduction paragraph. So, firstly, the broad statement. In Arthur Miller's drama, The Crucible, John Proctor recognizes his goodness in himself as he reveals, "For now, I do think I see some shred of goodness in John Proctor." You see how I've incorporated a quotation within the opening statement, revealing that he is about to die as an honorable man, protecting both his legacy and reputation. Now, very important, I've also contextualized this quote and not just used it on its own. Now, let's quickly look at the topic, because our topic is often based, or our thesis statement is often based on our topic. John Proctor can be defined as a tragic hero because his downfall is caused by a weakness within himself and not by external factors. So, our thesis statement says, Proctor may be seen as a tragic hero. However, but his demise is not entirely his own doing. This essay will examine why Proctor's character may be viewed as a tragic hero, his hubris, his redeeming qualities, and finally, his tragic demise. So, we have, when we look over here, we have our first body paragraph, our second body paragraph, and our third body paragraph. Now, let's look at the writing process. How to write a body paragraph. Have one paragraph for each major point. So, you start off with your point. Never retell the story. Only provide examples, which is evidence, from the plot that illustrate or explains your point. So often, your evidence and your explanation of this evidence will be very intertwined. Then link this back to the point and the essay question. Make sure that each paragraph follows the Peel method. Now, the topic. Once again, John Proctor can be defined as a tragic hero because his downfall is caused by a weakness within himself and not by external factors. So remember, in our introduction, in our thesis statement, we said that yes, he could be seen as a tragic hero, but his demise is not caused by only himself, but also by external factors. So we are only partially agreeing with this statement. Now, let's make our first point. Traditionally, a tragic hero is a central character of a high social status who is respected, and has a potential for greatness. A tragic hero often falls victim to a fatal internal flaw. So that is the point. So now we are discussing him as a tragic hero. Now we're explaining. Many in the community see John as an upstanding and respectable figure. So we spoke about a tragic hero being a respected figure, and now we're explaining this point. Now we're providing evidence to show that he's a respectable figure. This is evidenced by the mere 30 people who attended Proctor's excommunication at the end of the play. This quality is similar to that of a tragic hero, right? Now let's explain it further. Furthermore, John Proctor initially is a flawed character. So remember we spoke of a flaw, that they have an internal flaw. A flawed character, having participated in the act of lechery with Abigail Williams, who previously was his servant. Okay, so he participated in lechery. Now we are providing evidence of this. John states that he has thought of Abigail softly from time to time. However, he is truly remorseful for this and ends the affair. So that is the proof that there was an affair, but he is apologetic about it. Now let's link it back. Proctor's flaw in judgment, leading to his participation in an extramarital affair, and his influence liken him to that of a tragic hero. So now I'm linking what I've discussed and how Proctor could be seen as a tragic hero. The conclusion. Do not introduce new facts into your conclusion. So do not have any new ideas. Briefly summarize your argument. So your only purpose with the conclusion is to summarize your key aspects and not introduce any new information. Do not use rhetorical questions in your conclusion. This is something that is done for speeches, not for a literary essay. Now, how will we write our conclusion? There are many factors that reveal that John Proctor is a tragic hero. However, it could be argued his demise is not entirely his own doing. So once again, we are only partially agreeing with this statement that his downfall is caused by a weakness within himself and not by external factors. We are saying that his demise is not only his own doing. This is evidenced by his initial flaws of lust and pride, as well as his social influence. So this is what we discussed in our first body paragraph, right? So it's a summarization of what we discussed in our first body paragraph. His character does have redeemable qualities and realizes that he has to be selfless to protect the ones he loves. So here we have our second body paragraph summarized. However, he is not solely responsible for his demise, as the oppressiveness of the Puritan society also lead to his tragic ending. And that was what we discussed in our third body paragraph. So the conclusion is basically just a mere summary of the key aspects of the essay. Now, let's look at some writing tips to remember when writing your literary essay. Give your essay a title. Put the name of the drama in inverted commas. Refer to the audience if you are discussing a play, and then refer to the reader if you are writing a literary essay on a novel. Use only formal language. Avoid abbreviations, slang, rhetorical questions, or colloquialism. Avoid a conversational tone. For example, so now you guys see. Then, do not write in the first person, I think. Be objective. So instead of saying I think, rather say it could be argued. One could argue. And then more answering techniques. Remember, the structure is very important. Structure your points according to the order of events in the play. Make sure that your paragraphs flow coherently. Use words like also, furthermore, in addition, or moreover to connect your ideas. And replace the word but at the beginning of a sentence with words like contrary, however, conversely, on the other hand. Now, let's look at a topic from a past paper. We will be looking specifically at Hamlet for this exercise. Deception and manipulation are central to the tragic consequences in the play Hamlet. So, deception and manipulation, so that's the first aspect of it, are central to the tragic consequences. So the tragic consequences are the second aspect of this question. So we'll be looking at how deception and manipulation lead to tragic consequences in the play Hamlet. Critically discuss the extent to which you agree with the above statement. Now, you will see when you look at past papers that the memoranda for examination papers are all bulleted. But you may not write a bulleted essay. It must be a cohesive essay written in paragraph form. Your essay must not be written in bullet form. Very, very important. Here are some of the main key ideas that were taken from the memoranda. And now let's look at how to structure it. So this is an example of an introductory paragraph. So now we've decided, instead of starting with a definition of a specific word in the question, we'll be starting with a quotation and then contextualizing that quotation to reveal its appropriateness in connection to the question. So, the broad statement or the quote. Marcellus's statement that there is something rotten in the state of Denmark draws the audience's attention to the deceit and the corruption in Denmark. So, here's my quote, and here I've contextualized the quote, and that's all just in one simple sentence. The thesis statement. It is evident that deception and manipulation are essential to the tragedy that ensues at the end of the play Hamlet. So, I am then agreeing with the topic. This essay will focus on the deceptive and manipulative nature of Claudius. So that's going to be our first body paragraph. Hamlet's actions to uncover the truth of his father's murder. So this is going to be our second body paragraph. And lastly, the deception of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern will be our third body paragraph. Now, let's look at structuring a body paragraph. So, firstly, we are using the Peel method, and we'll be using the P for point. Claudius appears to be a gracious, able, and wise ruler. However, he is a corrupt, selfish, and ruthless king. So he appears to be one way, which is gracious, able, and a wise ruler. So this is all got to do with manipulation and deception. He's deceiving people to believe that he's one way when he's in actual fact a different way. An explanation of the point. To become king, he has murdered his brother, King Hamlet, and seduced and married his former queen, Gertrude. Now, let's provide evidence of this. The ghost of King Hamlet makes this known to Hamlet, as he describes Claudius as the serpent that stings thy father's life. So here we've used an actual quotation from the play in Act 1, Scene 5, and we've used that to support the point that we made. Furthermore, while Claudius acts as a caring and concerned stepfather to Hamlet, he actually regards him as a threat. So here we are dealing once again with the deceptive nature of Claudius. He uses Polonius and Ophelia to spy on Hamlet and recruits Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to discover the truth about Hamlet's behavior. So here we are explaining this point again. And now we're providing evidence of it. When Claudius realizes that Hamlet knows the truth about King Hamlet's murder, he resorts to treachery to get rid of Hamlet. Firstly, now we're explaining this again. Firstly, he sends Hamlet to England to be killed, and then later conspires with Laertes to kill Hamlet. Now, we are linking it back to the topic. Therefore, Claudius's manipulative and deceptive ways cause all the corruption and calamity in the play. Now for the conclusion. In conclusion, the tragedy that ensues or develops in Hamlet is caused by the manipulative and deceptive tactics of various characters. Claudius's deplorable actions, so that means his evil or vile or sinister actions, from the onset, so from the beginning, is a catalyst for the tragedy. However, Hamlet's mousetrap and antic disposition, so that is his facade of madness or insanity that he puts on, as well as Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's conniving plans with Claudius, contribute to the tragic ending. So, very important, I've only summarized the key things from paragraph 1, 2, and 3, and I've not introduced any new facts or evidence within my concluding paragraph. So here it says again, your conclusion does not have to be long. The purpose of it is just to summarize your key ideas and not to include any new information. Now, before we move over to Venice where honest Iago is waiting, let's take a quick breather. We'll be back after this short commercial break. Welcome back. Now, as I said, we'll be looking at the Othello literary essay. So we are dealing with the same topic as with Hamlet. The only difference is now it is in relation to the play Othello. So often you will see that there is cohesion from one essay to the next. So they'll ask the same type of essay for Hamlet, Othello, and the Crucible. And you will obviously pick the drama that you have studied. So here we have deception and manipulation are essential to the tragic consequences in the play Othello. So this is the first aspect, deception and manipulation. And then the second aspect would be that they are essential to the tragic consequences. Right. Here, once again, we've got the bulleted memoranda, and you will not write your essay in bullet format. So let's look at how we are going to structure these bullet points into a coherent essay. So, once again, we start with the broad statement or quote. So, in this instance, we've decided to rather opt to use a quotation as opposed to defining a specific term within the question. Othello's reference to Iago as honest Iago captures the manipulation of this villain. So, Iago is the villain, who is able to deceive so many characters in the play. So please take note that we've used a short little quote and we've contextualized it all within one single sentence, right? The thesis statement. In the drama Othello by Shakespeare, it is evident that deception and manipulation are central to the tragedy that ensues at the end. So we are agreeing once again with the statement made in the question. Points to discuss. So how our argument will develop. Firstly, this will be discussed by examining how Iago manipulates Othello. So that's the first body paragraph. The second one, how Desdemona falls victim to Iago's deceit. And thirdly, Othello's fall from a level-headed army general to a jealous and murderous husband. So those are our three body paragraphs. Now, let's look at the construction of a body paragraph. So we'll once again use the Peel method, firstly starting with P, point. In Iago's plot to exact revenge on Othello and Cassio, he deceives characters, linking to the deception about his true nature and intentions. Let's explain that now. Iago's keen awareness of the personalities of others allows him to succeed with the deception and manipulation, ultimately destroying others. Evidence of this destruction. Othello regards honest Iago as his trusted advisor, which makes him susceptible to Iago's plotting. When Iago advises Othello to hide from Brabantio's kinsman, it is supposedly to protect Othello. So look at how I've briefly quoted little parts of quotations to be support of the point that I've made. Further explanation. However, Iago's intention to make Othello appear is to make Othello appear guilty. Furthermore, he uses Othello's trust in him to manipulate Othello into thinking that Desdemona is unfaithful. Now, evidence. Iago reminds Othello that Desdemona has deceived her father and may thee. This blind faith in Iago drives Othello to murder Desdemona, and now we are linking it back in this last little portion, and is the main cause of the tragedy in the play, which is, we said, essential to the tragic consequences in the play. So look how we are linking it back to the topic. Now for the conclusion. In conclusion, the tragedy that ensues is caused by the manipulation and deceptive tactics employed by characters in the play. Although Othello does act deceptively upon occasion, the major catalyst for the tragic consequences at the end is Iago's deceit and manipulation and his facade of honesty. So here we are basically summarizing the main aspects of our body paragraphs. Now let's look at the crucible essay topic. So once again, we've got a bulleted memoranda, and we will not be writing a bulleted essay. Remember, we are going to write a coherent essay in paragraph format. So, once again, our topic is deception and manipulation are central to the tragic consequences in the play, The Crucible. So, firstly, we start with a broad statement for the introduction. Proctor's words, "Little crazy children are jangling the keys of the kingdom," highlight how the court and Salem have fallen prey to the manipulation of the girls under the leadership of Abigail. Now, please just quickly look closely that here we have one sentence that incorporates both the quotation and the contextualization of that quote. Then we have our thesis statement. In the drama, The Crucible by Arthur Miller, it is evident that deception and manipulation are responsible for much of the tragedy that ensues. And so once again, we are going to agree with this statement. This is evident in Abigail's manipulation, our first body paragraph, of the court to exact personal vengeance. 2, Proctor's initial deceit of lechery, and thirdly, the deceitfulness and hypocrisy of the court officials. So the first body paragraph is going to be Abigail's manipulation, the second one, Proctor's initial deceit and lechery, and the third body paragraph will be on the hypocrisy of the court officials. Now, let's use the Peel method again. The point. Abigail's confession of her involvement in witchcraft is a ruse that helps her escape punishment. So this is when we are looking at the body paragraph. We start with the point, and that is the main point of this body paragraph. Explanation. She assumes a position of authority which has disastrous consequences for the village, especially when the other girls follow suit. Evidence of the disaster that she causes. She goes on a tangent with the girls calling out many for being seen with the devil. Abigail's charade that she is able to sense witches enables her to conspire against Elizabeth in the hopes of being able to resume her affair with Proctor. So this is an explanation, and now we're providing evidence of this. Abigail uses the poppet given to Elizabeth by Mary, as well as her stabbing herself, are deceptive tactics used to manipulate the court into believing that Elizabeth is a witch. Abigail's intentions are revealed as she expresses her wish to dance with John on his wife's grave. When, explanation, Mary attempts to be truthful in court, Abigail and the girls pretend that Mary is trying to bewitch them, resulting in Mary accusing Proctor of being in league with the devil, thereby leading to his arrest. And now we are linking it. Abigail's plan backfires and ultimately causes the prosecution of Proctor. Now, let's look at the conclusion. Remember, no new ideas. In conclusion, the tragedy that ensues is caused by the manipulative and deceptive tactics of various characters. Although Proctor is initially deceitful in hiding his affair, it is not his actions that cause the deaths of multiple characters. The tragedy is caused by the manipulative and deceitful nature of Abigail and the girls, as well as the court's choice to continue deceiving the Salemites, despite knowing that the witch trials were a hoax. Now, I think we have gone far enough into the witch trials. Let's take a quick breather before we return for a quick recap. Now, let's quickly recap what we learned today. So this is how our lesson developed. We looked at terminology, we looked at the basic analysis of the drama, we looked at how to approach the question, and we looked at various answering techniques. These are some of the keywords we looked at. Critically discuss, which is to weigh up the strengths and weaknesses of an idea or statement and respond to it in detail. Critically comment, to make logical connections between ideas and offering your own perspective based on a thorough evaluation. Validity, to determine how truthful a statement is in order to determine its credibility. Justify, to give reasons to prove how reasonable a statement is. Soliloquy, a speech made by a major character alone on stage, in which the character reveals his or her innermost thoughts and deepest emotions to the audience. Aside, a comment made by a character in the play that is intended to be heard by the audience and not by the other characters on stage. Stage directions, instructions to actors, generally written in italics and enclosed in brackets. These are usually given by the director in a stage production. Tragic hero, a central character of a play that has a fatal flaw or hamartia that leads to their own downfall. Dramatic irony, the irony inherent, implicit in speeches of characters where the audience is aware of a fact or event or truth, but the characters in the play are unaware of the original intention and double meaning of the speaker's dialogue. Here are some of the critical errors that are made. Learners present a superficial retelling of the story. Additionally, a marking guideline of the previous year was studied and forced upon the current essay topic. Many essays were narrative and did not have an argument. Learners repeated the question statement as an introduction and at the end of each paragraph, which became extremely boring and mundane. Inadequate or vague references were made to the text to support the argument being developed. Substantiation must be specific and relevant. Writing the essay and then rewriting it does not constitute planning and is the reason for some candidates not completing the paper. Rather use a spire diagram to plan and do not write a rough draft. Many learners use language very carelessly, not capitalizing letters, not punctuating correctly, not using the apostrophe to indicate possession or contraction. So clearly look at how you've used language and grammar. In some cases, basic plot details were not known and characters were incorrectly identified. This would suggest that candidates had not read the prescribed text, so you have to read the texts. There was an over-reliance on summaries and film versions of the text, and film adaptations are often not 100% accurate. These were some of the important skills that you require in order to write your English Paper 2 examination. For further examples and for practice, you can go to the May-June 2024 supplementary paper, the November 2023 Paper 2, the May-June 2023 supplementary paper, as well as the November 2022 Paper 2. I truly hope that you are equipped and have been taught skills that you would be able to use when writing your final English Paper 2 examination. Please remember to thoroughly and conscientiously study your drama text before attempting to write your examination. Good luck.